It's been a few weeks, and I still don't know what this nail goes to. I can't find where this would have gone in the table, so I guess I don't need it anymore.
Wild like wild.
Hello, welcome to the Wild Review. I'm the Wild Reviewer, and welcome back to Rewild, a series where we take a look at some of my old Wild reviews, and we talk about them. Today we are looking back at a Wild review that originally wasn't on the list for me to look over, but it was one of the things I made multiple videos on. I've spoken about it multiple times, so it only fits that we talk about Lab Rats. Lab Rats, if you don't remember, because it's been a few years, was a Disney XD show about a young boy named Leo Dooley whose life is flipped upside down when his mom marries a billionaire tech whiz scientist kind of guy. He's not a scientist, he's just really clever with gadgets. And they move into his high-tech mansion where Leo discovers in the basement of his said house lives 3 teenagers who have bionic abilities. Now at first, the show looks like a very cheesy, your typical Disney Channel sitcom with a group of siblings going out into the real world wanting to live a normal life as a normal kid while trying to hide a secret that they have, which was a very common thing when it came to Disney Channel shows. I want to say about 70% of every main character in a Disney show had some secret that they had to hide from everybody, and I guarantee you at one point throughout the series, somebody close to them ends up finding out that secret, but doesn't do anything to jeopardize what's going to happen in the future. They keep that secret and they gain that trust. Lab Rats is no different than any of those shows, at least in the beginning. I was a huge fan of Lab Rats, mostly because of the story-driven episodes that they had. I gave them a different name when I talked about them, but Lab Rats wasn't your ordinary Disney show. It actually had a story. There were multiple story arcs, essentially, not season-driven story arcs, but there was a lot of continuity that then affected certain episodes. I guess the best show I can compare it to is Steven Universe. There are episodes of Steven Universe that deal with the homeworld situation and other gems coming down to battle the crystal gems in Steven. You have all those story-driven episodes, and then you just have filler episodes. That's essentially what Lab Rats was. You had story-driven episodes, and then there were filler episodes. Majority of the time, all the episodes were filler episodes, but occasionally you'll get these really action-packed episodes. That's what I really liked about the show. It was just the story itself. The villains were pretty intense, I'm not gonna lie. I thought they were really intense. Victor Crane, for the longest time, was my favorite supervillain just because of how badass he was. Like, the guy didn't care he was in a children's show. He wanted to murder these children. He made it very clear he wants these children destroyed. I mean, it was pretty intense for Disney, but at the same time, this is the same company that kills off mothers. So I shouldn't be surprised on how dark and intense the company is. Lab Rats was my favorite show, and I say was because it's not anymore, and that's only because it's not on TV. Lab Rats ended in 2016? Is that right? Lab Rats ended, but then they did a sequel series, which was also a spin-off, where they merged with the characters from Mighty Men, which was a different Disney XD show, a show I wasn't a huge fan of. It was kind of like Lab Rats, but it didn't know when to be serious. Even when the serious episodes took place where it was being driven by the actual story that was being told, every second the characters got on screen, there was a joke. And I'm all for comedies, but the jokes were ridiculous and stupid and bad. I wasn't a huge fan of Mighty Med like I was with Lab Rats, but the merge they did bringing Lab Rats and Mighty Med together, not just in the crossover that they did with both shows, but this series, Lab Rats Elite Force, which was the spin-off, that wasn't that bad. They toned down the comedy when it came to the Mighty Med characters, which I really appreciated, because I didn't have to sit through really corny jokes that made me want to vomit or, jump out a window. I guess the craze for Lab Rats and Mighty Med was dying down at this point because Lab Rats Elite Force only had one season. Now, assuming that Lab Rats Elite Force was very popular and had gone on for the length of an average Disney show, which in this case was 4 seasons. I don't know any other Disney show that exceeds 4 seasons, honestly. But assuming Lab Rats Elite Force had gotten 4 seasons, the series would have been over by now. I think it started in 2016, so that meant either last year or this year would have been the last year of Lab Rats Elite Force, assuming that it would have gotten 4 seasons and it had the official Disney run. But like I've brought up, Lab Rats was my favorite show at the time. I had done a number of Wild Review episodes talking about Lab Rats. I reviewed the series as a whole. I reviewed episodes, like my top favorite episodes, I think. I know I reviewed the finale. I reviewed a number of things when it came to Lab Rats because I was a Lab Rats geek. And I think it's only fitting that we travel back to Season 2, which I believe this video was 2015, I'm pretty sure. It's only fitting that we jump back in time and see what my past self had to say in his first video talking about Lab Rats. Let's see if it still holds up. Do I agree with what I said? Let's find out. Lab Rats is awesome. It's badass, it's funny, and it's awesome. I thought it was just like spitting it all out there. You know Lab Rats, it's that Disney show. That Disney show that everybody hates. Or at least some people hate. A lot of kids like it, and I like it. My brother might like it. Some of my friends like it. I like it. I'm pretty sure that's a given. We know I liked Lab Rats. I just sat here for 10 minutes my time, however minutes for your time, talking about how much I love Lab Rats. Actually, I guess love is the wrong word. I'm going to go ahead and agree with myself that I liked it. Love is a very strong word, as I've learned. I was just excited whenever a new episode came. I was a fan, I didn't obsess about Lab Rats, but I was definitely a fan of the show. This is also the first time I think I've ever geeked out about a Disney show. I like Disney. I don't watch Disney Channel now, which may surprise some of you, because I do watch Cartoon Network still and some of Nickelodeon, but I stopped watching Disney Channel a few years ago. Disney XD, that's a different story. I still watch Disney XD, so I guess that doesn't surprise anybody, but I can't think of any other Disney show that I really enjoyed and became a fan of. I mean, I like the Disney shows that were on, definitely. I just don't recall ever geeking out over them. I was never on the edge of my seats to figure out what's going to happen to Zach and Cody now. Are they going to get caught? I guess that's because they were a structured show. Every episode was different. It was an episodic series. Lab Rats, again, it was focusing on a certain story. You may not look like it, but you got to watch the certain episodes and not necessarily start from the beginning of the season, but you do need to kind of get some context as to what's going on when you come across those certain episodes. I would say it's the only show that actually goes to limits other Disney shows would not dare to go to. Like, I doubt you would see any action-packed stuff going on in The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody if they brought in a main antagonist. Then again, this show's about 3 kids with bionic abilities fighting evil kind of when it strikes, and that show was about 2 kids living in a hotel. Alright, bad comparison. Yeah, like I just said here, Lab Rats goes to limits other Disney shows don't go. Yeah, because other Disney shows are not about bionic teenagers. Again, this is a very different Disney program. There are a few different Disney programs. Gravity Falls is probably 1 in a million. I'm surprised they were able to get away with certain things on Gravity Falls. I've been watching a little of The Owl House recently. It's not a show that I'm into right now, as in like I'm actively watching it. I've only been tuning in because nothing else has been on. That and Amphibia, I've been checking out a bit of that. And I don't know the full stories on those, but those also seem like very Steven Universe-esque Gravity Falls type shows. I think Alex Hirsch actually works on the Owl House, so that's probably why.
I could talk about it for hours, but because we have limited time, here are 3 reasons why I like Lab Rats.
So these are my reasons why I like Lab Rats. Let's see how many times I end up repeating myself here.
Number 1, it's the only Disney show that actually comes close to killing their main characters. And by close, I mean close. Because we gotta remember, it's a Disney show. You can't have deaths of the main characters, you can't have blood. If one of the main characters decides not to return for a season, they do what Pair of Kings does, and have the main character leave. In the most pathetic way ever.
Lab Rats is probably the only Disney program still to date that I think almost got away with killing off characters on screen. There was an episode where one of the characters flatlines, and I just found that really interesting. A few episodes prior to that, the villains of that specific episode, which I believe was Victor Crane and his assistant, one of his bionic soldiers, they were able to bring down a beam in the school and it landed on Leo's arm, essentially crushing the whole entire thing. Yeah, there were a lot of interesting things that I'm surprised they got away with. You know, if you were a teenager really interested in the show like I was, you'd probably be at the edge of your seat, which I know for a fact I was in those kind of episodes because I was curious to know what was going to happen and how this would later affect the series.
Not only that, but there was also a second death as Leo almost died in that episode. That's because Leo has a bionic arm, and he was given that in an episode called You Posted What, which again is a long story. He got his arm crushed. You'd have to watch the show to understand. But Leo used his arm to take some of his energy out of his body and put it into Donald's in order to save his life. However, that started to speed up Leo's aging process, and Leo basically almost died in this episode. That is until the bionic soldiers, who are now turned good, did the exact same thing to Leo. And because they all did it at the same time, the thing is, it's very confusing. I don't understand it. Like, Leo did it, and he aged fast, but because a bunch of them did it, the process is... You need to make sense, show!
I'm such a geek. I'm a geek over a Disney show. For children. Even though I was a child at this point, but still. At this moment, you don't understand how this fully works. You're just a little confused. I know how it is. I haven't seen this particular episode that you're talking about in years. It's been at least a few years. I haven't watched Lab Rats since they stopped airing on TV because I moved on. The same episode where a character flatlines, that character, I don't know why I didn't say his name, was Donald Davenport, the dad in the series. He ends up flatlining, and Leo, who now has bionic abilities because of that beam that fell on his arm, hey look at that, it all connects. He now has a bionic arm, and when Donald flatlines, Leo gives some of his life force that he's able to take from his bionic arm, puts it in him. Leo starts aging rapidly. At the same time, there's a bunch of bionic soldiers from a previous adventure that occurred. There's a lot in regards to these characters. I'm not going to go into it, but there's more bionic people now. Because Leo gave away his life force to Donald, Leo is now rapidly aging, and he is on the verge of death. So a few of the bionic soldiers go around him, and they give him some of their life forces. They claim that it's not going to affect them because they all gave a little piece, so it won't affect them. It's not as intense as it was for him. I don't know why I didn't process this when I first saw it, or even when I was talking about it, but because multiple people were giving their life force to Leo, it never dawned on me they're just giving a little speck of their life. To where Leo just took like a huge chunk of his life, they're all taking like this big of it, and just giving it to him to save his life. So of course they're not going to rapidly age, they're not going to be in danger. They gave like a speck of their life to him. Leo gave a whole kidney.
Number 2, the show knows the difference between being funny and being serious. Lab Rats is one of those dramatic shows on Disney Channel, but it's also a comedy. There is a laugh track, there is an applause, there is all that stuff. But the show also knows how to be serious at some points, especially when there's a villain like Crane or the new villain Giselle. You know, when those kind of episodes happen and a character is put into a life dangerous situation such as dying, you know, there's no laugh track. There really isn't any sort of like track at all, actually. In the episode Bionic Action Hero, for instance, the part where Chase is on the bed and his heart isn't beating, Adam and Bree run in to see if he's alive, and there is actually a serious moment that makes you want to cry. It's so perfect that they didn't ruin it by any jokes, they didn't bring in a laugh track. In fact, it was a whole full minute and a half of absolute seriousness, which I'm not 100% a fan of. I like comedy, but in this situation it works, and I think that's what makes this show great. They know the difference between doing comedy and also know when the difference with being serious is. Yeah, I mean, to reiterate this, I mean, I've already kind of said something on this. The action-packed, story-driven episodes tend to be a bit serious, just because they're dealing with certain things, certain life-threatening things that come their way. I am referring to, at times, there will be very dramatic scenes. The characters will be upset, they'll be angry. There won't be a laugh track because, yes, this is a Disney sitcom, so of course we need to add a laugh track. At times there won't be any of that. There'll be serious moments. There may be a little joke here and there. But usually when a serious scene happens, it tends to follow the road of being very serious, and the dramatic music fits very well. Again, there is no laughter, there's no goofiness on the side, and look, I'm all for comedy. I love comedy, but a good story knows when to balance out the humor and the dramatic bits. And that is something that Mighty Med never really did. I feel like I'm bashing on Mighty Med a lot. I know I'm going to bring up Mighty Med in this because I remember I spoke about it. I mean, Mighty Med wasn't a horrible show, but there were characters that were very insufferable to listen to. There were times where they tried to be very serious, but it was always followed up by some joke. I never enjoyed that kind of stuff. That's why I prefer the Mighty Med characters' performances in Lab Rat's Elite Force, because it is a little different. Specifically because in Elite Force, Mighty Med is essentially destroyed. Mighty Med, if you remember, was about a superhero hospital, and the hospital was destroyed, and people died. So they do take it a little bit seriously, which I don't have a problem with. I think there needs to be a balance in these kind of stories, because it can't be ha-ha funny all the time. You know, when something happens, you act very seriously. Unlike another show that ran on Disney XD that I don't like very much. I mean, it's alright, but I'm not a fan like I am with Lab Rats. Look at that! What did I just say? We're not going to comment on that. I've talked about Mighty Med way too much. And number 3, it's just different. I know what you're going to say. This show is not different from any other show. You can compare this show to Wizards of Waverly Place because of how similar it is. 3 kids have magical powers and they gotta keep it a secret. Yeah, I get it. But Lab Rats is unique in its own way. It's got villains, like I said, that are willing to do anything to kill these kids. It's got plot twist, it's got seriousness, it's got suspense, it's got the main characters in a limousine about to fall off a bridge this Wednesday on Disney XD. Lab Rats Off the Edge. On the Edge. Sorry. Is it different? Is it really that different, though? Maybe in the context of what the show was doing in the sense of the episodes. But like I brought up in the beginning, when you really look at Lab Rats, how different is it from any other Disney show? Apart from the villains, apart from the way the story goes down, apart from how it connects to its spin-off, which, you know, come to think of it, unless you're Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, you really didn't have a spin-off. Raven's Home, I mean, that's a reboot, a reboot spin-off, I guess. Or Cory in the House. Why did I just forget about Cory in the House? But that's a little different, because all these Disney spin-offs, they never really directly go straight into each other. Lab Rats' transition into Lab Rats Elite Force was very smooth. It was just brought up that something else is going on. I need 2 of you to come with me. 2 of you need to watch over the Bionic Academy. It's okay if you don't know what that is, if you've never seen Lab Rats. I understand I'm talking about a lot of things that are very out of context here.
You're just gonna have to trust me, I know what I'm talking about. If you don't, look it up. I think in the context of, the general idea of lab rats, it's not completely different. Because again, it's focusing on teenagers, wanting to be teenagers, but they have a secret. We've seen that multiple times on Disney, and I'm sure it's going to continue on, because that stuff seems to work. It's worked before, and it's still working now. Of course, I don't know what's airing on Disney right now. In fact, I can't even assume what's airing on the Disney Channel, because Disney as a whole is acting a little weird with its releases. Ever since Disney Plus launched, there's just all this media going out. And I'm not specifically talking about the Marvel stuff and the Star Wars shows. I'm talking about like actual Disney productions. It's just really confusing to know what's on Disney Channel and what's not. You can pass off High School Musical, the show, the series, the song show, to be a Disney Channel show. But it's not. It's a Disney Plus exclusive. I kept seeing promos recently for a kid doctor show. I don't know what it's called. I recognized the girl's face. I know she was on something else. That is, I think, a Disney Plus show. I don't know what's on Disney Channel anymore. I don't know if anybody does. And I don't think anybody cares either. Because something else that's been in the news is that Disney channels all over the world are just going away. I think America is the only country to actually have the Disney Channel now. I think every other country lost Disney Channel because of Disney Plus. But I don't even... Is Disney Plus globally? One streaming site isn't globally. Maybe that's HBO Max? Whatever the case is, I can't speak on Disney Channel's behalf right now, because I don't know what they're airing. I do want to say, I think the closest thing to Lab Rats, besides Mighty Med, in terms of story and the structure and the theme and maybe even some dark episodes, I want to say Casey Undercover, maybe? But I've never seen an episode of Casey Undercover. I think somebody actually recommended me to check it out, as it gives off a little similar vibe to Lab Rats. I may have seen like a clip of it, because Zendaya was in the clip, and there was a laugh track. She was also in Shake It Up, so it's very possible that I could have just been seeing a Shake It Up clip. But she played a different character, and she was much younger. So you know what, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever seen Casey Undercover. I know I fully never sat down to watch an episode, but I know that's about spies. And I know it's kind of in the same lane of Lab Rats, I guess, in regards to serious, dramatic storytelling. You know, here I am saying I like comedy, and yet I'm complimenting the serious story elements in children's media. This is what Lab Rats has done to me.
It's pretty awesome, and I like it. I like Lab Rats. I love the show. It's a good show.
Look at that! Did we expect anything else? Of course I'm gonna say it's a really good show. But this is the question. Do I still think it's a good show? That's a drum roll. Or why didn't I just do this? Yes, I still think it's a very good show. Not in the sense of how I used to think it was. Because again, you can clearly see here, and if you look at my other Lab Rat episodes, I am a huge geek over this. Like, I could be foaming out of the mouth of how much I like Lab Rats. I mean, I need to calm down and catch my breath, I think. Lab Rats, to sum it up, was a very good show. It was written very well, at times, not all the time. There are episodes that I was not a fan of particularly. I was more of a fan of the action-packed episodes, if we couldn't get the hint on that. I like the villains in the show. The villains had great motives. If you've seen Lab Rats, like I have, it didn't dawn on me until when the show ended officially that all the villains in the show are connected to one character. I don't know if I want to get into it because it is a lot, and I feel like I'm just going to go down the road of explaining a lot of things, which I really don't want to do, but there is essentially a character in the show who is responsible for the main story of Lab Rats, like the main reasoning why all this is happening. And every villain we see in the show has some connection to him in some way. And any other villains that are essentially working with those villains that have a connection to him, it's still linked. You can make a chart I've made a chart and then deleted it because I wasn't saving it. It was just something I did for the hell of it. So I just found that really interesting, and that's what I liked about Lab Rats. The story knew what it was trying to tell. The characters were very fleshed out. I do feel like a lot of them went through character arcs. I'm not a huge fan of every character, but majority of them were not annoying to watch. And I like how it went from being your average Disney show to your average Disney show, but with a bit more of a finesse to it. I can definitely say it is one of the best Disney shows, or at least one of the better Disney shows that I've seen in recent years, because I know Disney around the time Lab Rats was kind of a thing, especially on Disney XD, there were a bit of questionable things. Put it like a PNG of Crash, from Crash and Bernstein, if you can. You know, some things that, you know, you just kind of question what was going on.
But I am very sad that Season 4 will be the last season of Lab Rats. But I am very excited because next year, they announced last month that they're doing a spin-off series, or a sequel series, that's also kind of like a crossover with Mighty Med, called Lab Rats Elite Force, which it sounds pretty interesting, you know, luckily it has the Lab Rats writers, but let's just hope it doesn't have the Mighty Med humor.
We already talked a little about Lab Rats Elite Force, but I did make a Wild review about Elite Force, and I'm fully up for checking that out. So if you want to see me talk about Elite Force, let me know in the comments. I will gladly check it out. And with that, that brings me to the end of this video. It was fun taking a stroll down memory lane to hear me talk about Lab Rats for this amount of time. I don't think there's anybody else on the internet or anywhere that has ever spoken about Lab Rats in the way that I have. Just really liking it, really hyped about it. Like I was waiting for the new premieres every week. That's how invested into the story I was. So that brings us to the end of this Rewild episode. Hopefully you had fun. I keep saying that. Did you have fun? Did you have fun watching me do this? Let me know in the comments below what you thought about this video. Let me know what you thought about Lab Rats and everything I had to say about this. Have you ever checked out Lab Rats? Were you a Lab Rats viewer? If you weren't and you actually hated the show, let me know why. What did you not like about Lab Rats? I'm not gonna fight you in the comments because I don't do that. I don't care. I wouldn't do that. That's not nice. Let me know all your thoughts about what I said in this video, and also let me know what you thought about my original comments on Lab Rats. Do you think I was a geek? Do you think I was geeking out about a silly old Disney show? That brings us to the end of this episode of Rewild. Next time you see me, though, I can guarantee you we're gonna have a gay old time. That's the Flintstones. Next time you see me, though, I can guarantee you we're gonna have a festive time. Thanks for watching The Wild Review. I'm The Wild Reviewer, and you just saw me review a thing.
Wild like wild.